All right, let's get it. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo Sports Talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you very much to everyone out there, as always, for listening to the show, watching it, however you consume Talking Buffalo. I appreciate you all very, very, very much. I also appreciate today's sponsor, Sunny Reds, 1841 Abbott Road, minutes away from Highmark Stadium. I say it all the time. Some of the best wings you're going to get anywhere in town. You can ask Tyler Dunn, Joe B. They just joined me there a couple days ago. The wings were awesome. Thursday nights now, they have dollar chicken tenders. I've never been there for that. That might change actually when I'm done recording this. Every other Saturday, including this one, they have karaoke, and that is really, really good. If you like to sing or you like to watch other people sing and have a good time, that is a spot that just pops for karaoke. So make sure you check that out. All right, folks, this is our weekly Podbag episode. This is one of my favorite episodes. This is where you control the narrative, your questions, your comments, your takes. I pluck them from our YouTube channel page. I pluck some from Twitter, get a couple emails every week. I respond to them. Interactive episode. I love these. A spoiler alert, all with the exception of one are Buffalo Bills related. I got one Sabres one, which I'm sure is going to set me off. I'm going to save that for the end. Also saving for the very end, too. I want to do some thank yous. I got a chance, like I said, been very blessed. Episode 1000 dropped earlier this week. Kind of caught in a whirlwind, though, with guests and everything. So I really haven't had a chance to sit down and thank some people. So I'm going to make sure I do that at the end of this episode. Let's get into some stuff. One quick note, though, I do have to say this. I'm recording this Thursday, later afternoon. I'm looking at my clock right now. It's roughly 4 p.m. I say that because lots of shit could go down between the time that I record and the time you listen to this, whether it's early Friday morning, maybe a little bit later in the day on Friday. NFL stuff, fast and furious. The NHL trade deadline is literally 24 hours from now. So things may go down. If they do, you could expect a Talking Buffalo Emergipod Friday night. Sometime Friday night and Saturday morning, I will keep up to date, even if it's not with this show. It's that time of year, Emergipod time of year. Anything can happen, and it is getting wild around the NFL right now. So many players requesting trades, being granted permission to seek trades, big name players getting released, and that's only going to intensify over the next few days. Quick, real up to the minute news. The Bills did make a move before I started recording this on Thursday. They cut punter Sam Martin. They save around like 1.9 million at against the cap. So we're looking at the possibility of Puntapalooza, punt stock, whatever you want to call it, a training camp. I know my guy Joe B is going to be really excited about that. So the Bills did make a move. Plenty more are going to be coming just because the Bills need cap room. So you're going to expect to see contract restructures, maybe an extension or two, certainly a couple more cuts. So we'll see how that plays out over the next few days. I'd also be remiss too. So it's March 6th when I'm recording this anyway. A year ago on this date, one of the more eventful offseason days I could ever remember, not even just with this podcast, just being a Bills fan pretty much all my life. They cut into the core of that football team a year ago today. Trey White, cut. Jordan Poyer, cut. Mitch Morse, cut. Not to mention Saran Neal, Deontay Hardy, Naheem Hines. All these cuts came on the same day. And I just remember saying to myself, well, what the hell is going on here? Are the Bills throwing away 2024 in February? Of course, it did not turn out to be that way, but just craziness on that day. And look, you could argue at the end of the day, it didn't feel like at the time, but it's like every single thing the Bills did last season in terms of who they let walk or who they cut ended up working out, I feel like, in their favor. The guys I just mentioned, they let Gabe Davis walk. and get paid by Jacksonville in free agency. Didn't hurt the Bills at all. They traded Stephon Diggs at the beginning of April. Did not hurt them at all. You can argue that it would have been nice maybe to get Leonard Floyd back, but honestly, I don't think he was much more than what they got from Von Miller or AJ Epinesa over this past season anyway. So I guess the point is lots of things are going to start happening now. Maybe let's not overreact. And I know I shouldn't be preaching to people when I am the ultimate knee-jerk reactor, but I'm going to have opinions. I'm going to at least try to not lose my shit over, every little single thing that Brandon Beane does or doesn't do starting quite literally now. So we'll see how things play out. One other quick note too, Mitch Morse, I mentioned him. He officially retired on Thursday. Great career, 10-year career, 5 of them with the Buffalo Bills. I thought he was a great player and the perfect person for Josh Allen at a time where Josh Allen needed a solid veteran leader at center. I think he helped greatly with Josh's career. He was pretty rock solid on this football team, a beloved player by fans, and I'm sure years and years and years and years to come, Bills fans will remember him very fondly. So congratulations to Mitch Morse on a great career. All right, let's just bang into these couple good ones. And I feel like the theme for most of today's interactions is contentious because there's just so many possibilities out there with the Buffalo Bills right now. Everything's on the table with the Buffalo Bills. They could do major things. They can do small role player things. They could create the cap room and players. Unlike past years, when you were a free agent, you didn't come into Buffalo. If you came to Buffalo, it's because A, they were going to grossly overpay you. See Langston Walker, Derek Dockery, Mario Williams, etc. Or you came to Buffalo because pretty much that was the end of the road for you. Go to the Bills, try to kickstart your career again, and go get paid somewhere else. Not the case anymore. Buffalo is a very viable option for players who want to win. They hear good things about the organization. It's a good place to play, great fan base, and most importantly, the Bills win. They're in the mix every year. So everything is on the table, and everybody's got very differing opinions on what that big swing, the moves that the Bills should make this offseason. On that note, let's just jump in. Johnny Goods 97 says, what do you think is the most realistic offseason scenario that is going to get the Buffalo Bills over the hump finally in 2025? All right, thank you for that. Realistic offseason scenario. Again, I'll repeat what I just said. The Bills are a very good team now, one of the best in football. And I feel like Buffalo is a destination for players these days. Who doesn't want to play, especially if you're an offensive guy? Who doesn't want to come play with Josh Allen, right? And they also could find that cap room for a big splash. Every big name player, free agent, or trade available realistically is in play right now. Myles Garrett is realistically in play. DK Metcalf is realistically in play. If either of those guys are traded. Trey Hendrickson, literally just minutes before I started recording this episode, the Bengals are giving him permission to seek a trade. Now, I think the Bengals would be absolute idiots to trade Trey Hendrickson to one of their biggest rivals in the conference in the Buffalo Bills. But hey, it's in play, feels like a good fit, and I'm sure he'd want to be here. That's my point. Players want to come here, and I think everything is in play. So I'm not ruling anything out. But honestly, at the end of the day, assuming they don't get Myles Garrett or assuming they don't get DK Metcalf, let's just assume both of those, all right? The Bills' biggest gains to me for the 2025 season is pretty simple, and it's this. And I know it's the boring answer and not the most popular answer, but it's how I feel. The biggest gains for 2025 are going to be in their own building right now. The best way for this team to get even better and get over that hump, which right now, obviously, for the last 5 years has been the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they're going to have to go through Kansas City again. But hell, man, 4 times in 5 years until proven otherwise, you got to assume that. But anyway, the best way they're going to get over that hump is for guys like Greg Rizzo and Terrell Bernard. These guys go from good to sometimes great players. They need to just be great players, period. Consistently great. And they're not right now. They are at times. Terrell Bernard looks like a world beater some weeks at middle linebacker. Other weeks, not so much. Ditto with Greg Rizzo. Greg Rizzo looks utterly unstoppable, unblockable at times. Get into the quarterback, pressure into quarterback, defending the run, sealing the edge, hustle plays. Looks unstoppable some weeks. Other weeks, nothing. That's the inconsistency with these guys. Again, good to sometimes great players. They need to be great players. They need to step their games up and they need to continue to ascend. Matt Milano, he's got to stay healthy for a full year. That's no given. I get that. But Matt Milano staying healthy for a full year. Now all of a sudden you got Groot and Bernard who have taken their game to another level, which by the way, they're young. It's still absolutely possible. In fact, I'd consider it maybe even likely that they could step their games up this year. Matt Milano staying healthy for a full year. And then you go to the other side of the football. Keon Coleman going into year 2. A subject of several quotes from Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. Dalton Kincaid, who played hurt last year. And I know it sucks that his production dipped and, that drop against the Chiefs, hurt or not, utterly inexcusable. But I think it's fair and reasonable to say Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid need to step up. Look, the Bills had a historically good offense last year. No question about it. Not going to be easy to maintain that, though. But you know what will help them? If Keon Coleman is better than he was last year, if Dalton Kincaid was better than he was last year, it's the in-house players right now, to me, those guys stepping up, that is going to result in this team making the biggest gains. Now, they're going to add for sure before the draft, 100%. Maybe they get a Leonard Floyd type at edge. I'm hoping for more. We'll talk about that in a few. But, you go get a Leonard Floyd type. Maybe you get a Curtis Samuel level wide receiver. And by the way, you want to be down on Curtis Samuel. I felt like he came on towards the end of the year, and he was a good receiver in Washington and for a year with Carolina before he came to the Bills. He got banged up early, kind of a theme with a lot of players, and really took a while to find his footing. But a pretty good player. Floyd, a pretty good player. They need a corner. They may need a safety. All this stuff is in play, all of it. But year after year after year, we see it around the league. Teams go nuts in free agency, and it rarely pays off. The Jacksonville Jaguars, it feels like they've signed everybody and anybody over the last few years. The Chicago Bears, it feels like they've signed everybody and anybody over the last couple of years. Has it worked out? No, they don't have no Josh Allen. I get that. I'm not saying the Bills shouldn't be active. The Bills should definitely be active. I'm just saying, going out and spending a shitload of money and signing 7, 8 big, bigger ticket free agents ain't always going to work out. So for me, the Bills' biggest thing is their own guys just being great more often. And the inconsistent guys, like I just mentioned, guys like Bernard, getting more consistent. At Brian P, 150H, just about every player on defense currently is a complementary piece. There is no focal point. Maybe each of these guys makes a play here or there through 17 games, but you cannot rely on that from game to game. They need better talent up front. How many games were the Bills immediately trailing their opponent and scrambling to figure out what happened against the Cards, Titans, Patriots, Rams, Jets, Broncos, the Ravens twice, and the Chiefs, if I'm not mistaken? That's like half the games, not acceptable. All right, Brian, that's good. I love that take, man. That is a great take. Spot on. I was just talking about it. That's what it's all about. Groot is just great sometimes. Terrell Bernard is great sometimes. Ed Oliver is great sometimes. Tyron Johnson is great sometimes. They lack a guy that you could trust in the biggest games. And they lack a guy that they could trust in the biggest moments. And it's killed them. It has killed them. You just go back to these 5 elimination losses. How many times these guys that I named that are often good to great players, they disappeared. Where was Greg Rizzo in this game? Where was Terrell Bernard in the Chiefs game this year? Where was Ed Oliver the year before that? You get what I'm saying? So I actually agree. I think that's a great take. The problem is that Chris Jones and the Myles Garretts of the world, they don't grow on trees. But if you could get one, I'd move heaven on earth to do so. So I want to be clear. The first point, the first question, I think the biggest key to the Bills is their own players continuing to ascend and develop. But make no mistake about it. Go get you a stud, or hopefully, and especially on the defensive side, more than one stud, or certainly an upgrade, who's going to help you get there. At Ryan Bills 01. This is up there with the worst takes I've heard all year. All right, Ryan is referencing a tweet that I had that I'm not giving up, if it's me, a second and a fifth for DK Metcalf. And that's, Brandon Beane's biggest commitment. It needs to remain getting a massive upgrade at edge rusher and or defensive tackle over what's on the roster now. So long story short, I said, it's not that I don't want DK Metcalf, it's that he ain't top priority to me. DK Metcalf, again, another guy who could be traded. So anyway, Ryan continues. Neglecting wanting a player that would fill a need just because you want to focus on another position is terrible thinking. We need an upgraded wide receiver. Beane should take the best deal that comes along, regardless of whether you would rather a different position be addressed first. All right. Well, with complete respect, Ryan, the Bills' failure to get it right with the defensive line is the number one single biggest reason why the Buffalo Bills have not been to a Super Bowl once over the past 5 years. And I don't even know how you could debate that. Von Miller, the ACL tear, you can't see that coming. I get that. But he was a risk. He had, his age, a previous ACL tear. Von Miller was a risk when you signed him. It hasn't worked. It has not worked. Re-signing DaQuan Jones last year, something that I very much advocated a year or so ago at this time. That didn't work out this past season. It just didn't. Re-signing A.J. Ebeneza for 2 years. Didn't work out, really. Bringing in Dwan Smoot. Drafting Boogie Basham a handful of years ago. Drafting Dwayne Carter, unfortunately, it looks like right now anyway. Lots of other moves on this defensive line, on a defense that's just gotten absolutely, positively smoked in the playoffs elimination games. 5 years running now. And I want to be clear, too. I love me some DK Metcalf. I mean, you got to be an idiot if you don't love DK Metcalf and you wouldn't love to see him catching balls from Josh Allen and what he could do for this offense. I mean, come on, man. Who wouldn't want him? I literally said, I tweeted earlier this week, literally, I said, if the Bills were to get DK Metcalf, it could have the same type of impact on the Bills offense that Derrick Henry going to Baltimore had with the Ravens last year. And Lamar Jackson won MVP before Henry, just like Josh Allen won MVP before potentially they were to get DK Metcalf. But Henry brought that offense to another level. And I think DK Metcalf would do that for the Bills too. But, I ain't giving up a second round pick and more and giving DK Metcalf a $25 to $30 million per year extension. Just can't do that. I can't do that because of the situation with my defensive line. Now, the Bills, look, they were, like it or not, a historically good offense last year without a true number one. Is that sustainable? I don't think so. Not as is. We watched the films. You've watched the games. They struggle to get separation. They can use another guy with speed. There ain't no question about that. But I feel like you could get a modest upgrade at far more reasonable prices and you're still going to have a very, very good offense. To me, you said negligent. What's negligent is neglecting the defensive line and letting them be second fiddle. You're treating it like it shouldn't be the biggest priority, and it absolutely should be the biggest priority. If you don't make any significant changes to that defensive line and you have different expectations next year, shame on you, man. That's your fault. History's going to repeat itself if you just keep rolling out the same guys. You got to make changes at that position. And, like I said earlier, what would make the Bills, historically great offense sustainable this year as opposed to last year is their own guys. Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, their first overall pick the last 2 years. You expect them to step up like your top overall picks should. One last thing about getting DK Metcalf here for me. Anyway, to some extent, not saying he become a bust, but let's just say DK Metcalf is your big swing. That's the big move you make. And obviously, he's going to be your wide receiver one. He's a stud. I mean, the dude's had over 1,000 yards 3 times. He's a beast. We all know that. He's your wide receiver one. Khalil Shakir is still going to be a prominent slot receiver on this football team. He's going to matter a lot. He just got a big extension. Dalton Kincaid, if healthy, and I'm telling you, he was more hurt than most people know last year. He's going to be a big part of this offense. The running game with Joe Brady and Sean McDermott is a big part of this offense. You saw it last year. James Cook, not happy right now to an extent. He's going to be a big part of this offense. Josh Allen running the football, his legs are going to be a big part of this offense. I just named a bunch of dudes. I won't even count Curtis Samuel. Won't even count him. I won't even count Matt Collins, assuming they re-sign him. Won't even count those guys. But just who I named. You know who I didn't mention? I did not mention Keon Coleman. If you bring in DK Metcalf and you got Shakir, Kincaid, Cook, Josh's legs, I think you could take off the table any realistic hope that Keon Coleman's going to be much more than what you saw this rookie year. A guy who makes an occasional jump ball catch, a guy who can make a play when things break down. But if you don't draft guys 33rd overall to do that, right? So if you're good with Keon Coleman, Evan, 20 to 40 catches max per season, then go get you an alpha male, target hogging number one wide receiver. Because otherwise, for me, I just don't think it's let me say that the right way. It is a good move, and it is a move that I would do, but it is not a move that I would put as a priority over the defensive line, assuming that Brandon Beane's going to get one big swing at the piñata coming up. Anyway, quick break, come back. I'm going to fly through a lot more of these. All right, back here going through this week's Podbag. Like I said, pretty contentious. A lot of people, especially if you're on Twitter X, you could see it. People disagreeing, devolving into arguments and sometimes fights. It's funny. We just talked about this on the show that I had with Joe B and Tyler earlier this week, spending time on social media, kind of going through the mud. And I said I need to do a better job of it. Yet I probably spent my entire Thursday morning going back and forth with Bills fans over DK Metcalf and other guys. I'm almost funny. I'm staring at my live tweets right now. Raquan Davis, defensive tackle, just got cut by the Colts. Literally, by the time you hear this, there's going to be a handful of names that are cut or available for trade, or you might actually see some transactions. See how it plays out. Anyway, Bills Dude 17. There is no upgrade for the offense anywhere even close to acquiring DK, while free agency in the draft is littered with talent on the defensive line. All right, again, with respect, the Bills ain't littered with cap space. I feel like that matters, right? No, I know they could create cap space. They're going to create cap space. But, say littered with talent. The Bills ain't littered with cap space. I don't see the Bills trading for DK Metcalf and signing or trading for one of the top defensive line guys out there, whether free agency or trade. I just don't see that being in the cards. And maybe I'm wrong. I'd love to be wrong. Man, you could go get Myles Garrett or Josh Sweat and DK Metcalf. What are you kidding me? Let's go. Right? I just don't see that in the cards. And when it comes to the defensive line, I can't be more clear about this. I don't want just another guy. I want a clear, substantial upgrade over what they have right now. And clear, substantial upgrades over what they have right now, it's not littered. Not in the free agency pool anyway. Josh Sweat to me is maybe the one free agent pass rusher that is an absolute clear upgrade. I see Greg Rizzo and I see Josh Sweat, and that is something to fear. I think that will make Greg Rizzo a much better player. And I know Josh Sweat, hasn't racked up a ton of sacks through his career, but watch the film. Joe Marino was raved about him on Locked On Bills. Of course, Joe, somebody that I have the utmost respect for. That's the guy he wants too. He's watched the film. He sees what he can do. You watch the Super Bowl, what he did to the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't think that was a fluke. You can be Sweat, Rizzo, Ed Oliver, and another upgrade at defensive tackle. Now you're talking, man. Now you're talking. That to me is the bigger priority. That's all I'm saying right now. But you said littered. I don't think it's littered. I like Hassan Reddick, but he's a gamble. 50 plus sacks or whatever in 4 years with Philly, goes to the Jets, doesn't get a contract, sits out most of last year. I don't even think he was trying when he played because his numbers sucked. He was a literal non-factor. They played the Bills in week 17. I didn't even realize he was on the field. It's a great talent. What has he got left? How much does he care? I don't know. He's a gamble. Chase Young, second overall pick. He's out there. Big gamble. DeMarcus Lawrence, good player. 33 years old. Big gamble. Malcolm Kuntz, young, coming off an injury though. Good, but a gamble. So my mindset is I want somebody who I know is going to be significantly better than AJ Epinesa and or Von Miller. I put a poll up, by the way, on Twitter. Who would you rather have if you're a Bills fan? Either Metcalf or Josh Sweat. And I said all factors need to count too. Because if you go get DK Metcalf, you're giving up draft compensation, a day 2 pick, probably a little bit more, and you better be ready to give him a sizable contract. So, over 1,000 votes, nice sample size. A lot of you disagree with me. Let's just put it that way. Like 57% of you say you'd rather have DK Metcalf over Josh Sweat, even if you factor in compensation that you would have to give up to go get him. I don't agree with that, but we're all entitled to our opinion. But if you're a Bills fan and you decided you'd rather see Brandon Beane's big swing on a top level wide receiver over defensive line, I think you've allowed yourself over these last handful of weeks to kind of forget about how the last 5 seasons have ended for the Buffalo Bills. Again, I would implore you, go rewatch, torture yourself. Go rewatch their last 5 elimination losses. Just do it. And I think you would have a different opinion. Again, both would be great. The wide receiver and the defensive lineman, the studs. But if you can only get one, come on. For me, it's definitely on the defensive line. At FCQ77 says AJ Epinesa, a first and a second for Garrett. I'm more along the lines of what Joe B wrote in his athletic column not too long ago. Take that 2 out and add a second first. 2 1s and AJ Epinesa. I think that's probably what it takes. I'm still not convinced that Myles Garrett is going to be traded. I know the Browns have said they're not going to trade him. Myles continued to say he doesn't want to play for them. I still feel like Myles Garrett gets a $36 million extension with the Browns. Suddenly he's going to feel much better about being a Cleveland Brown. We'll see how it plays out, but that's the way I feel right now. At Jazz Unlimited, I almost wonder if one of the reasons of firing the strength and conditioning coach was because of how players come back from injury. Mari Cooper wasn't the same. Keon Coleman wasn't the same. Curtis Samuel never could get right from the first injury. Kincaid couldn't shake his injuries, and a whole bunch of others. Even when and if players came back, they just weren't the same. Obviously, I have no idea, but that's just my thoughts. I really don't have much to add with you there. I agree with you, man. I think it's a very well pointed out, Jazz. Did Eric Seattle actually get fired though, or was it at the end of the day officially anyway? Was it a mutual party? And he got a job right away with Jacksonville. I don't know if he got fired, if he wanted out. I don't know quite how that played out. Either way, returning from injuries, a very, very, very big problem for the Buffalo Bills this season. Those guys that you mentioned, them not getting right, them not being healthy enough down the stretch really hurt them a lot. I would even add Terrell Bernard into that mix. I don't think you mentioned him as well. I don't think he was quite the same. Teron Johnson was getting banged up a lot. Now, again, is that on the strength and conditioning coach when Teron Johnson's got his head down and unfortunately, friendly fire with Taylor Rapp? I don't know. But yeah, not coming back from injury effectively was certainly a problem for the Bills. At Dog Mentality 1 says, will and should the Bills take a nice look at Joey Bosa? Nah. Nope. 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 Too much health risk. I'd rather just keep Von Miller if that's what you're going to do. Nope. He's not a double-digit sack guy. Hasn't had that since 2021. He hasn't played more than 55% of the snaps in 3 years with the Chargers either. Not that effective anymore at the stage of his career, and you can't trust him. So, plus, it's going to cost some money. Absolutely not. Give Von Miller a big fat pay cut and just keep him if that's what you're going to do. And so we're clear. I don't want that. I don't want that. I would rather see the Bills cut ties with Von Miller and go get, like I said, a premier pass rusher. Ashley says, is there any chance Kyrie Elam's career with Buffalo isn't toast and he could have some kind of breakout opportunity in the last year of his deal? Unfortunately, Ashley, I really don't think so. I think he's done. I think he's done. I makes no sense to cut him right now. They're not going to cut him right now. They would lose. They're not gaining a penny of cap savings, so it makes no sense to cut him now. I think he's going to be traded at some point. I just, by the way, breaking news again, Christian Kirk, I didn't mention him on this show, but he was somebody that a lot of fans have been talking about over the last 24 hours. He got cut from the Jacksonville Jaguars, or was going to get cut by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Well, there's a lot of talk about him becoming a Buffalo Bill potentially as Josh Allen's boy. In fact, they were just pictured together a couple days ago. That ain't going to happen. He was traded to the Houston Texans for a seventh round pick. So obviously, with that being Josh's boy, that just tells me if they only got a seventh round pick for him, that the Bills had no interest in Christian Kirk as a trade guy. Anyway, I'll proceed. I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, we're back to Kyrie Elam. Look, Sean McDermott, don't trust him. You could see that a mile away. What is he going to do in his fourth year that you haven't seen in the first three? He got a chance. He's had a couple opportunities. It sucks that Benford got hurt, but it did give Elam an opportunity against the Chiefs, and he floundered it. He just floundered it. He's looked okay at times when he's played, but more times than not, no. No special teams value. I could see the Bills trying to give him away. You can get a seventh round pick or maybe a pick swap. You get rid of him. If not, you bring him to camp, and at the very end, I think you cut him. You're not going to be a starter. What value do you really have if you got no special teams value? I don't really see much upside with him at this point. By the way, cornerback, we'll talk about it maybe Sunday on our free agency preview show, or Monday, I should say. But corner's going to be something the Bills got to address because they got Christian Benford and not much else. Not really at all. Rasul Douglas, free agent, might walk. We'll see. Hank says, this is the last one here, and then I want to get to some thank yous at the end. That's it for the Bills. This is a Sabres one. I take a deep breath. Every time I think about the Sabres, they really freaking annoy me. Hank says, you made it clear you don't really watch Sabres games anymore and just rail on them on social media because they stink. But I've been a fan through and through for a long time. But even I have to admit, it's getting really hard to stay loyal to this team. Watching them feels like a slap in the face at this point. Let me say this. I haven't been talking about the Sabres much. The trade deadline tomorrow, I don't know what's going to play, how it's going to play out. They've extended Jordan Greenway. I actually don't have a problem with that. But Chad DeDominicis is going to be live with me on Monday night. We're going to talk Sabres. And, of course, we're going to talk Buffalo Bills NFL free agency. So that's going to be like a 9:30 p.m. show live on the YouTube side. We'll talk plenty more about the Sabres in. But let me tell you this. All right, Hank, let me tell you why, for me, this team, this organization remains an absolute joke, a clown show, a laughing stock. And this is honest to God. Okay. It's actually It's not the 14-year drought. Well, it's going to be 14-year drought. It's the longest, not just in the NHL, not just in NHL history. It's the longest drought in all of the four major professional sports, which they're going to move ahead of the Jets and extend it again. But it's not that. It's not even the 13-game winless streak that they had early in the season. It just absolutely buried them and pretty much, for all realistic intents and purposes, ended any playoff hopes through the season. It's not that. It's not that they can't beat the fucking Montreal Canadiens. All 3-1 against the Montreal Canadiens, okay? It's not the owner traveling to Montreal and hearing reports that the solution is in the room, and then they go out that night and they get smacked in the face by those Montreal Canadiens. It's not that Kevin Adams' stupid press conferences where he whines about players not wanting to be here and that he's trying to trade and fucking palm trees and all that other shit, although that's a huge joke as well. It's not that either. And it's not even, although it's close, but it's not even just the no answer for when Tage Thompson, the cheap shot that almost got his fucking head taken off and it went unanswered. The lack of accountability in that moment and in that locker room. It's not even that, although it could be. For me, and all those things are factors, but for me personally, what makes this team the biggest joke, clown show, fucking laughing stock to me is this past Monday. Okay. They're playing the Montreal Canadiens, and for whatever reason, Lindy Ruff felt compelled to call it a must-win game. That's what he told reporters. Literally, it was a must-win game. For some reason, that's what he said. So, it's a must-win game. Everything's on the line. You got to win that game. And in that game, Mateus Samuelsson, a guy that you gave a 7-year, $30 million contract. That's $4.3 million per season. A guy who signed through like 2029, 2030. It may as well be 2070 for all I give a shit about. They give him a long-term deal, good money after whatever amount of 50, 60 games, whatever, and he scored a fucking goal. Your season is on the line, and your long-term commitment guy isn't even on the ice. He's a healthy scratch. Are you freaking kidding me? 7 years, $30 million, 4.3 per million per year, a healthy scratch in a must-win game in favor of Dennis Gilbert. How can you or anyone take this organization seriously when shit like that happens? Seriously, if you look at the money, that would be the equivalent. Now, I'm not talking about talent-wise, but that would be the equivalent of the Bills having a must-win football game and scratching Khalil Shakir. Now, I'm not comparing Khalil talent-wise to Samuelson, but commitment, contract, term, a must-win, a playoff game, so to speak, and Khalil Shakir was a healthy scratch. That's what it would be like. Joke. Joke, joke, joke. How can anyone like this team? How can anyone respect this team? How can anyone root for this team right now? Blows my mind. It truly, truly does. All right, done with that. Before I get out of here, I didn't really have a chance earlier this week. Like I said, we dropped our 1000th episode of Talking Buffalo. Been a whirlwind. I've had guests on all week. So at the very end here, saved us for the end. I just want to take a moment or two to thank everybody out there who has really made this all possible. Quickly, I want to go back to the beginning. So I'm born and raised. I'm a Buffalo dude, man. Spent almost my entire life here. 2016, the family moves to near Sarasota, Florida. In the first year, absolutely loved it. It was a vacation. It felt like that anyway, like a permanent vacation. Who doesn't love sunshine and beautiful bodies of water and palm trees and gorgeous beaches and attractions and just endless things to do? It was awesome the first year. But then, the lure of feeling like a vacation starts to fade away. The grind, the everyday life, the work, all that stuff, really starts to take a hold of you. And about a year or so into it, I started getting bored. I really didn't have any friends down there. I wasn't trying to make any friends, which is ironic because during the back half of my stay in Florida, I ended up meeting some of the most amazing people, making some awesome friends. Shout out MVP Sports and Social. It's funny because if I would have met them in that first year, I might have never had this podcast because I wouldn't have been bored. But that's what I was. I got bored. I got homesick. I felt most importantly, perhaps just completely disconnected to Buffalo, man. So I wanted to come up with an idea to figure out something to stay more connected. And I was kind of tired of writing. I remember blogging and shit like that got boring to me too. So I decided on a podcast. I was a big fan for many, many, many years. Larry King's show on CNN, those long form interviews. I loved that. I always wanted to kind of emulate that a little bit. So I said, you know what? Fuck it, man. I'm going to start a podcast. Zero podcasting experience, zero broadcasting experience. Pretty much any background I had with sports media was all writing. And I had no expectations, zero. Didn't know how I was going to play out. So I'm kind of stunned in a great way to say, here we are, 7+ years later and 1,000 episodes in. And there's just too many amazing guests and people that I want to thank. But I will say specifically, I want to thank 4 dudes specifically here. Sal Capaccio, Tim Graham, Tyler Dunn, Jay Skursky. 4 guys who, before I even started the show, I reached out to them. I asked them to come on. I told them what I wanted to do, talk about their life, their career, not really so much about the Buffalo Bills or football or even sports. And they were all down. And it really helped me just gain some confidence. It helped me get the show off the ground running immediately. And because I had that name recognition now on my show, that allowed me to start reaching out to some national people. And ultimately, they came on the show. People like Ross Tucker and Richard Deitch and Mike Vaccaro from the New York Post and Josina Anderson, who was at ESPN at the time. Lee Steinberg, one of maybe the most famous sports agent who's ever lived. And then, of course, the big one for me, anyway, Adam Schefter. Had all those people on early, man, and it really helped me get that street cred going. And from there, it just kind of became a whirlwind. And there's so many people in the Buffalo sports media that I need to thank. Too many, like I said, to thank on the show. I'd be here all day. Buffalo Bills and other sports content creators locally. Awesome people, man. Some great connections, some great friends, some news media folk as well. Tons of former Buffalo Bills that I've had on the show, especially my guys. Shout out Eric Wood. John Fina's been on a couple times. Steve Christie, Don Beebe, Will Wolford, who, by the way, to this day, still probably one of my favorite 3 episodes that I've ever done with Will Wolford there. Stevie Johnson, just so many more. And athletes in some other sports, and besides just Buffalo sports that I've had a chance to have on the show. I grew up a huge basketball fan, loved point guards. Kenny Anderson, Rod Strickland, 2 of my all-time favorites. I was able to get them on the show. I'm a big fan of The Voice and American Idol. And I had a handful of reality singing finalist stars on the show. L.A. Yamin from American Idol season 4, one of my all-time favorites, man. I appreciate them all. I really do. And a special shout out to the people out there who've have done extended stints on the show. People who I could count on. When you do a show 5 days a week, it's hard to book a guest 5 days a week. You need to get some recurring guests, people that you could count on pretty much every week. Joe Yerdon was on with me every week, sometimes more, for literally over a year and a half. He was awesome. Anthony Marino, my guy, he did a full solid year with me. I could count on him every week. In fact, he came on after Joe left. Great stuff with Anthony. I appreciate him so much. My childhood buddy, Tone Bucks. We've had our riffs, our starts and stops through the years, but he's been on the show sporadically, but he was on episode 1. And then he was on just as recently as a few months ago. More recently, Matt Warren from SB Nation. I have him on the show. He was just on yesterday. I usually have him on Wednesdays, and he's been on every week since before the Bills season even started. And though I hate to give his ass credit, my guy, Joe from Queens, who minus, we'll call it a divorce after we had a falling out, lasted about a year or so, whatever. But besides that, dude has been here pretty much from day one. He's on every week. He's a guy I could call at the end, bust my balls. I bust his balls, but I need him for some. He's almost always there, and I appreciate him as well. So all that. And then last, not least, of course, all of you. Some of you are new. Some of you have been around for a long time. I truly, truly appreciate all of you. having this podcast, doing it 5 days a week is incredibly time consuming for me, especially because I have a regular job and I also have another part-time job. So it really cuts into my time. This has become my social time in a lot of ways, but time consuming, life changing, and it's worth it. Literally, it's worth it all because of you. I've made so many great friends through these first 1,000 episodes, so many connections through Talking Buffalo here. So thank you. And I'm looking forward to, God willing, hopefully the next 1,000 and maybe the next 1,000 after that and growing the show even more. So, Buffalo people, Florida friends who I still love very much to this day, all you guys listening and watching, thank you so much. Be back. Joe from Queens will join me. He'll be on the show Monday. If not, an Emergent Pod before that. Talk to you later.